Hi, I'm Joe Albrecht, Managing Partner and CEO of Xngage. I'm super excited to be joined today by Boggs, Director of our Digital Growth Services practice.
Hi Joe, thanks for having me today.
Of course, great pleasure. For more than a decade, we have helped manufacturers and distributors implement and grow their e-commerce operations. In order to stay ahead of the competition, you cannot take a set it and forget it attitude. You have to constantly monitor and measure vital performance indicators of your web properties to understand how are your customers leveraging the website. Then you can implement strategic growth marketing tactics to then further drive product assortment, throughput, optimization of product data, and in general, perform active online selling. That's why we invited you, Becca, to talk a little bit more of all the great work you're doing with a variety of our clients.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, our growth services team is focused on helping our customers optimize their e-commerce operations through their data. Key word there is their data. We offer analytics services, SEO, AEO, GEO, and ad strategy and management services. However, as you know, those three services are not weighted equally here at Xngage. Our catch, as I like to say, is that we believe in a very data-backed approach. So I actually will very rarely take on clients for SEO, GEO, or ads without first having a solid analytics foundation in place. As typically in B2B, digital marketing is far more complex and nuanced than in B2C.
That's right. And also having done B2B exclusively for 10 years, we understand how these businesses operate and who their customers are. That's why we understand that acquisition is actually the much more challenging piece.
Far more challenging.
And focusing on adoption and channel shift, getting customers to adopt digital tools, to use the website in the first place, not just to place orders, but for other things is so critical. Talk a little bit more about how you go about that.
Yeah, for sure. So as I said, B2B digital marketing can be far more complex and nuanced than in B2C. A few examples of that is your target audience typically is far more layered in B2B. A buyer at the end of the day is still a person who uses websites and e-commerce in personal ways as well as professional ways. And that can often show, you're targeting them as a buyer for a company, but they still have expectations of their website, your website, working in ways that they're used to, that they use in their personal lives every day. Another example is that B2B relationships between sellers and their customers are far more complicated. A B2B customer can pick up the phone and call their seller at any time. So the website and the sales team have to work very closely in order to be successful. Lastly, and you kind of mentioned it already briefly, but acquisition, retention, and APR hold far different weight in the B2B world. Losing one customer in B2C typically means losing one customer. Losing one customer in B2B means, or at least it can mean, losing an entire chain of branches that spends hundreds of thousands of dollars in 1 month.
Let's get into the first case study.
Yeah.
This is an exciting client of ours, very large, established industrial distributor with a lot of products and quite a lot of online revenue with 50 million annually already. So they approached you with a specific goal for this year. You have been working with them for a long time.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah, so they wanted to grow their e-commerce channel by 10% this year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Online, finding $5 million in a year.
Pretty much.
That was the task.
Yes.
How did you guys go about finding out how you could achieve that?
Yeah, so like you said, we've worked with this client for quite a while now, and I'm very aware of their overall business, their e-commerce, and then their analytics as well. And so with that, one, I knew that they had a large market share, so they were pretty saturated within their market, and we were able to do a deep dive into their analytics and actually identify that their APR was actually about $100 lower than what I would call their industry standard.
And that gave you some ideas that it would be much harder to target net new customers through acquisition.
And much more expensive too.
More expensive. And so the idea was to focus on the APR, that's
Correct.
the average purchase revenue,
Yep.
meaning the average order value, right? How
Yep.
much are people buying on average? online with the existing customer base, of course. So that's exciting and interesting. How did you determine then what would be good ways to increase that AOV?
Yeah, so we talked through a few strategies and came to the conclusion to really focus on threshold-based incentives and also improving on-site search.
Wow. Threshold-based incentives, that's a big word, but basically you're talking about promotions here, which is a kind of a retail B2C-like strategy.
Yeah, I get a lot of pushback on that in B2B typically.
Talk a little bit more about what you guys did specifically on that.
Yeah, so we looked at their promotion usage and the analytics surrounding that over the past 2 years. And then we actually, one, optimized the ones who perform the best typically over time for them. And then two, we upped that minimum order value on those promotions that were performing well.
Okay, so by increasing the threshold for when those promotions would take effect, you were able to basically extract more average order value. That's clear. But what kind of incentives have you seen, and maybe even with other clients? But what are things that work in B2B?
Yeah, so there's kind of the obvious ones, which is a % off an X dollar amount. Also, free shipping after a certain order, which is a good one as well to increase that minimum order value on. But then there's also other things that are more B2B specific, like gifts. Honestly, you would see that in B2C, or things like a free tool or a free additional product that kind of goes with the products they're already purchasing. Those are the I would say the four most common ones.
Interesting, yeah. And I think the free shipping is a big one because in B2B, unlike in B2C, people typically restock and replenish. So if they add a few units more just to get that free shipping, it's actually a great way to boost the average order value. Awesome, great. And then there was another strategy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned it already, but talk about that.
Yeah, so we talked about improving their on-site search. We took a look at their search to purchase conversion rate and found that it was a little lower than they would have liked to see. So with that, we talked about improving overall findability on site so that customers could find the products they're looking for more easily. We also talked about intelligent recommendations, which is when we suggest on different pages, including like the checkout page, for example, different products that go with what clients or customers are already looking at.
Okay, so maybe for the audience quickly to go back to the search-based conversion, that's something where you can track what is the correlation between the on-site search queries when people look for products and how they actually end up in the order.
Exactly. It's people on site who have searched, who also then convert and make a purchase.
And that's just something in Google Analytics that comes out of the box?
So search does and purchase does. However, we're able to develop more custom data points within those that kind of helps to support those metrics.
And to truly see what's going on.
Exactly.
Fantastic. And for that search topic, you then decided, or the client decided, to implement
HawkSearch. Yeah.
Which we have a connector that helps them implement that quickly because it takes care of all the indexing and all these technical things. Fantastic. HawkSearch also powers these recommendations.
Oh, yeah, they do.
And finally, it gives them the ability to really change the algorithm behind how products are presented and what is boosted and what is given to customers.
Yeah, it's a much more intelligent way of suggesting products.
Fantastic. Good. This all must have impacted the outcomes.
Yeah.
Let's hear how that went.
Yeah, so APR was up around 7% this year so far. Obviously, we're about to round out the year. And then we are at 10% or 10.6% year-over-year growth this year, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
So from $100 average order value, you went to $107. And then the promotion usage went up. The codes went up.
Promo code usage went up by 61%, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then items purchased as well was another metric that is kind of considered smaller, but that we definitely tracked and paid attention to. And that went up by 20%.
And were some new items purchased that maybe could you measure what the impacts were for the recommendations and these kinds of?
Yeah, so we do have some measurements on recommendations, but I expect to kind of see more of that coming in the new year, but given that HawkSearch was implemented at the end of the year.
Yeah. Great, Becca. So let's talk about the next case study, which we chose deliberately. It's an exciting business, but very specialized, highly technical parts. It's a distributor that sells those technical parts, and often those are actually obsolete parts, meaning the customers who are interested in these parts are, working in a specialized field, aftermarket. So they need something that otherwise is not available in normal purchasing experiences, right?
Yep.
The one goal is always to drive more revenue, as it was here. And the client came to you with the goal to do ads.
Yes.
But there were some challenges.
Yes.
Can you talk about those?
So this specific client had some very specific challenges. One, they're in a highly regulated industry. So the way they sell their products and then also the way they ship is highly regulated. So that was number one. And then number two was kind of what you already mentioned, obsolete products. Well, that results in a pretty small target audience. And that can be a big hurdle, especially with ads.
So talk a little bit more about the types of ads and how these challenges and your understanding of the client really then informed the approach.
Yeah. So two typical ways we would approach ads would be one, through Google Merchant Center using Google Shop ads, and then two, what I like to refer to as a search to purchase search ad. So to clarify there, what that is a search ad whose conversion goal is a purchase. Very typical, what you would typically think of for ads.
And with that, stay with that one, right? The Google search to purchase ad.
Yes.
That wasn't the right instrument.
No, so search ended up being a good instrument. However, search to purchase wasn't. And that's because of the hoops that they have with the regulations that are involved in their industry, specifically on their website. So a first-time purchaser specifically is going to have a few more hoops to jump through to purchase. So that wasn't a smooth customer journey, honestly, from search ad to purchase. So that Google wasn't going to be able to optimize for that very easily or well.
And you have a small audience also, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you're already targeting a very small audience with that as well. So we had to take a little bit of a different approach.
But that would have resulted in a bad ad spend or return on ad spend.
Yeah. So the return on ad spend for that small of a target audience with an ad that couldn't be optimized for purchase was going to be astronomical. It was not going to be viable long term.
Okay. So that wasn't the right call. Mm-hmm. Now you explored shopping ads as well?
Yes. So we also typically would explore Google Merchant Center and shopping ads on top of that with most of our clients. That wasn't an option for them due to the regulations, once again, based on their products and their shipping process.
Okay, so I think we need to talk a little bit more about Google Merchant Center.
Correct.
And what it is. Obviously, they didn't qualify, understood,
yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to register and you have to get your products in there.
Yes.
But what is it actually?
So Google Merchant Center is a platform that takes all of your products. You upload all your products into it, and then you are able to have product-specific ads or search. They can show up organically too, but the easiest way is to actually use like a shoe metaphor. So say you search for a sneaker, a tennis shoe. They will show up on the top and it'll be images specific to those products. That's what you're seeing. That's a Merchant Center product or a Google Shop ad. And then the alternative is obviously seeing like a big box store name on the search links at the bottom that you would typically see in a search results page.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So both approaches weren't ideal, but then you resorted back to Google search ads,
correct,
right?
Yeah.
Where you show up in the search results.
Yes. So we obviously, like we said, couldn't do the search to purchase conversion, typical kind of ad setup. So what we did, I've worked with this client for a long time on their analytics. So we've actually tracked their requests for quotes for quite some time. And we have seen within their analytics that their RFQs actually convert organically as of this point, very well. And I think it's because of the extra hurdles that it takes a first-time user to purchase on site. Yeah. So we decided to go forward with a search to RFQ conversion ad.
Love that example, and it's so good to hear it because it shows what we always say in other episodes, that in B2B, it's not just about for the website to take orders or to place orders and focusing on order conversions. This is an example where actually in B2B, quoting can be the more important feature. And you identify that, looking at the analytics, measuring this over a long period of time actually. And then you were able to optimize these search ads.
Correct.
So to get in customers into the RFQ flow?
Yes. So Google obviously has access to a lot of data. And if you set an ad to optimize for a purchase, it's going to look at a user who would make a purchase and say, hey, these are the data points that this person has that purchased. We're going to target more of those people. So instead of telling Google to look at people who purchase, we're telling Google to look at people who would submit an RFQ and to optimize and target based on the data points that those people meet.
That's great. And I know you know the results that you saw. With what is the story?
Yeah, so RFQs went up 24% actually.
Wow, and we can kind of equate that to a lift in revenue because we know a lot of the business comes in through RFQs, even in the offline world.
Yes.
And so
and you also have to think of long term as well in terms of these people who submit these RFQs actually will end up becoming e-commerce. They're no longer first time purchasers, so they can become purchasers more easily this way as well.
So it's an acquisition tactic, but around and focused on the RFQ flow, request for quote flow.
Yep, and optimized based on that.
All right, Becca, great examples, fantastic story. I'm excited to get in the last case study that we want to talk about, which is a distributor that is not as large, came to us a few years ago and was new to e-commerce at the time, not as mature, and had a conservative budget. They had built an online store, they were able to take orders, but the revenues weren't where they needed to be, and overall it just didn't play out yet, the digital commerce success story. So this is really a good case study to talk a little bit about, as you have touched many areas there. How did you get going?
Yeah, so the first thing we did was we implemented analytics, honestly. They didn't have anything at all at the start. And so that was the first step, because you don't know what you don't know, obviously.
Okay, so putting in metrics to see how are customers using the site and so on, learning more about their business and working with them. What did you find? What was one of the first things you could actually then tackle?
So the first thing was primarily surrounding their organic traffic. And like you said, they have a more conservative budget. So we couldn't just go in and spend a bunch of money on ads or anything like that. So we took a look at their organic products, or not their organic products. We took a look at the organic traffic and the products that were getting a lot of attention from both organic and then the ones who were performing well on the site overall, but not from organic specifically. And then we also took a look at offline metrics in terms of their products as well. And what we learned was that they were missing out on a lot of opportunity for some of these products through organic traffic. So we did some basic improvements for their SEO in terms of content, copy, like on-site basically SEO, and then also technically as well, which involves things like product schema, microdata, metadata, and all of that.
How many products did you focus on?
200. 200, yeah, just 200.
And we call this the diamonds list, right?
Yes, I called it the diamonds list. We called it the diamonds list, yeah.
Because those are the products where we believe we can create the most impact.
Yep.
What were maybe some gains that you saw on the organic?
Some of the improvements was a 25% increase in organic traffic and then an 18% increase in organic revenue.
Wow, so 25% more traffic coming in onto the site, and then out of this traffic, conversions that attributed to 18% in revenue.
Right. Yep.
Great. And I know you learned more about their product assortment, right, and what they were selling, over the phone and offline. And then you could also learn something about the customers in terms of what they were doing on the website.
Yeah.
What happened there?
So one of the things that we found was that the customers on the site were searching for products or specifically brands within some of the categories that they sold offline that they were not selling online as well. So that's something that can happen a lot with the newer to the e-commerce journey types of clients, honestly. You don't know what you don't know again. And so one of the things that we recommended was a product category listing expansion, actually. And so that was adding in some of those products and some of those brands within the product categories that were working really well offline and that people were searching for. And we could see that in their analytics. They were searching for these brands and specific products that weren't currently online.
So really nothing that cost any extra money.
No.
Simply by understanding what customers were looking for and then saying, oh, why don't you sell this online? And bringing those SKUs into the online catalog.
Exactly. And they were already doing it offline. So it was a pretty easy.
Low-hanging fruit.
Exactly. Low-hanging fruit.
Now, in working with them, there was other things that you guys learned from the analytics, but also from talking to the business. But one thing I think you did find in the data about the user behaviors that really then opened up an opportunity to look at this more holistically.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things we noticed was that it doesn't matter how many products you put online if people can't find them in the first place or reach them, I guess, to be more exact. So one of the things that the data told us, and specifically the overall purchase journey, the checkout journey, and then some of the user navigation and user engagement metrics as well, were telling us was that users are not navigating your website easily or finding products well, honestly. So that's when we actually recommended that the client work with our UX team and do a redesign.
Yeah, I remember that they had a drop-off even on the homepage that was extremely high.
Yeah.
People seemed not to be able to understand what they were actually selling or what their specialization was, their services. Okay, so yes, that's right. We brought the UX team, we did an assessment, we did a redesign, we streamlined the checkout and many things. But ultimately, all these activities, they took place within 1 or 2 years. What was sort of the results?
Yeah, so the end results for those two specifically was a 92% increase in revenue.
And that happened from 1 year to the other.
Yep,
I remember, and now I think it's good to hear that because that was all done without them having to spend more, hire any more people or resources, simply picking their battles very strategically based on the data and what we learned from the analytics, and then going after that, right?
Yep.
So now it's doing more of that plus some.
Yep.
And I know that the revenues have doubled yet again, are about on track to double again. So I think we have a 4x since we began the partnership.
Yep, right around there, I think.
Well, amazing, Becca. This really is a great selection of 3 fantastic, very distinct case studies. There's much more that you're doing with the client portfolio. Extremely proud of the practice, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks
and
for
for all the
having
hard
me.
work.
Yeah.
And for the audience who found that interesting, wants to learn more or discuss any of what we talked today about, please don't hesitate to reach out, visit us on our website, xngage.com, or engage with us on LinkedIn. And see you next time.